Welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac, the podcast that explores the intersection of finance and astrology, where we use a combination of spirituality and logic to help us connect the dots in the markets. Hosted by Corinne Florence and Claire Marinan, who both come from a diverse background, bringing with them a wealth of knowledge and experience in the realms of astrology, cryptocurrency, trading, philosophy, investment strategy, and of course, Bitcoin. In each episode, we explore the economics of the markets following the evolution of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency through each moon cycle and astrological transit. Join us on this journey as we explore the intersection of these two worlds that are often thought to be at odds with one another, finance and astrology. Whether you're a seasoned crypto investor, a day trader, or just starting to dip your toes into the world of Bitcoin and blockchain, Bitcoin Zodiac is the podcast for you. So sit back, relax, and come and expand your consciousness with us as we explore the world of the financial markets through an astrological lens. Okay, welcome back to the Bitcoin Zodiac. Today, Corinne and I have the pleasure of interviewing Efrat Fenigson. She's had an extensive career spanning over 2 decades as a corporate marketing and communication strategist with an extensive background in technology and innovation. She's now an independent journalist and the host of the You're the Voice podcast, which has reached over 1.7 million views in just 1 year. So this is a captivating podcast that delves fearlessly into the realms of health, economics, politics, mind control, money, sovereignty, and of course, Bitcoin. So Efrat interviews intriguing guests from all corners of the globe for open, uncensored dialogues, and also weaving in the perspectives on mental health and spiritual well-being. So Efrat passionately believes in free speech and self-expression, and her podcast helps you discover how much your voice matters. So welcome to the Bitcoin Zodiac, Efrat.
Thanks for having me, ladies. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Amazing. We're very excited to have you here. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start at the beginning and just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your podcast and how you found yourself down the Bitcoin rabbit hole.
Okay, so actually, let's start with 2001 when I came to Australia. I was a student and I came to graduate from my computer science degree, and I found the guy that was my boyfriend, and later he was my husband and the father of my son. So I stayed for about 6 years and I lived in Melbourne. I graduated. I worked in a games development company. So I was programming games for Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation. That was my beginning. So I was around technology since then, since 2000. And I was really curious with technology, but very quickly it was clear to me that I'm better off telling the stories about technology rather than creating it myself. There are other people that are so passionate about it more than me, but I'm passionate about creating stories and building a perception around whether it would be products or companies. And so I found my way a few years down the track in marketing. I started with business development and sales, but then I understood that I want to be on the business side of things. And I didn't want to go back to university to do another degree. So I opened my own business while I was still in Australia. And I had a fashion and accessories business. I had a couple of shops in Melbourne. And that's how I started my journey into business. I taught myself everything I need to know. So basically, that's what I do. That's like a theme in my life. Whenever I want to learn something new, also in Bitcoin recently, I just dive into it. I start working with it. So that's the best way to learn in my eyes. So I don't really think we need universities or schools anymore. I think all the information is out there. So it's very, you just need to know how to learn. And most of us have forgotten that. So going back to that, I went back to Israel after 6 years in Australia in 2007. I found a job. I was with my partner. He's half Israeli, half Australian. And we were in Israel together for about 4 years. It was very difficult for him to be in Israel because his mentality is very Australian and Israel is hardcore. And I was booming, like I was loving it. I found my job again and I was really blossoming. And I did want to have a child already. We were married at the time. And so I got pregnant. It's normally when I say that I want something in life, I work for it, but it happens. And so I got pregnant very quickly and I had my child. His name is Ethan. He's gorgeous. Today he's almost 15 years old. And 1 year later, we got divorced. And he went back to Australia, and I stayed in Israel with a 1-year-old baby. And I became a single mom. And I had to decide how I'm going to take that on because I didn't want to miss out on my career. I saw it kind of booming, and I loved what I was doing, and I didn't want to give it up. At the same time, I had a baby, and I really wanted to give him the best I could. So I decided to move close to my parents and have them as my partners and have them help me raise him. And they did, and it was fantastic. And I lived near them for about 11 years. And my son loved it as well. You know how they say that you need a village to raise a child. So I had my village. It was fantastic.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I continued working and doing really well at the tech industry in Israel. I became very senior in a very young age, part of management of companies, working in startups, making lots of money, working too hard if I need to judge today. Like looking back, I was working too hard and my son didn't see me as much as I think he should have as he was growing up, but then I compensated on it later on. But then I think I was like 30 something when I became chief marketing officer of different of companies. Like I worked several years for different companies and I gained a lot of experience in the business world. I had understood that I know how to make money. I know how to make money for other people. I know how to make money for companies. I know how to, take products and build the perfect brand around them or build the brand for the products and help sell them to the market, bring them to the market in the best possible way. I have really good human skills, so I can manage big teams with big people, with big budgets. And I'm very organized. I'm very analytical as well as creative. So I could take on that big role and do it really well. And for a few years, I was doing that. And I also established a business with two partners. We had a community of 150 CMOs, chief marketing officers like myself in Israel, that are all operating in global markets out of Israel. So there's a really big export community of global companies, tech companies out of Israel, not just tech, but in general, different companies, B2B, B2C. So we were running that community together for 7 years. And in the past year, I left that project as well and gave it to them. They continued doing it. And now I focus 100% on what I do now. So basically 2 years ago when COVID came, COVID came about 4 years ago, but 2 years ago, after I went through a really challenging time during COVID with being almost the only dissident voice out of thousands of people in my community, and actively deciding and choosing to speak out and not be quiet about my views and about the violations of human rights that I was seeing all around me. So I was in the streets for a couple of years and I was speaking out and I started creating content and I developed my own personal channels. And, people all around the world were following me to understand what's happening in Israel and how they can learn from what's coming. And I was also this bridge between other countries and Israel because people in Israel don't really follow things that are happening around the world. So I was like bringing news from all over the world to Israel when the mainstream media was blocking that or simply not sharing what's happening, or they were obviously completely thwarting the whole picture, showing that everything's great in other countries where really people were suffering in many, many places, including Melbourne, where I had lived and my ex-husband still lives there. So I was that bridge between Israel and the outer world. Let's call it that way. And yeah, and every time there was this major event like COVID, I got like a boost in the people that were my follower base just grew because of how brave I was to speak out and say what I'm seeing in front of me. And then once again, with the war that started between Israel and Gaza, October 7th, I had the urge to speak out again and say what I know that is happening from my experience. That just doesn't add up. And so I spoke about that. And then, I get the attention of the world because no one else is saying that. Because everyone's like looking at what's happening. Like, yeah, that's perfectly normal. What's happening here? Like people are being slaughtered in their homes for 8 hours. No one's coming to rescue them. And so, yeah, it's just it really makes sense that the army would not protect you. The police would not protect you. The government will not come when you're calling for help for hours and hours. And I know the systems, I know the security systems, and that was just not right. So I spoke about that again and again, another boost in attention from all around the world to my work and what I'm doing. And so, the more that happened and the more I kind of aggregated my courage to continue down that path, I realized that what I'm doing is really important. And as much as I am afraid to do it sometimes, as much as it's hard to be different than most of society and just talk about things, even if people don't like it, even if people have a lot of criticism, I understood that that's probably my mission in life. And so I have to turn that into my full-time job. And so I became a journalist. And again, I never went to university to study journalism. I just know how to communicate from my extensive experience in business and marketing. And I know the media space very well. I know how to create content. I have everything I need. I just needed to decide that that's what I'm doing. I know how to learn and investigate. So I became a journalist. I started writing for a newspaper. I started writing for my blog, and I opened my podcast. And and as you said, less than a year, and it blew up as well. So I interviewed different people. It's not just about one topic. So I'm covering a lot of topics, which I really like, because some episodes will be about COVID and health and natural health, and other episodes will be about climate and the hoax, and other episodes will be about the violation of human rights when it comes to digital life and digital identity and 15-minute cities and CBDC and and all these topics. And then other topics will be about Bitcoin and money and the fiat lies and and things that people don't tell us. But I think the common thread between everything I talk about and everything I do is that the people I host are really brave in telling the truth about their area of expertise. Yeah. And so it creates a very interesting show to listen to. And so I was surprised with how well it picked up, and I'm very grateful because I've never done it before like this. I did have a podcast before, but never like that. And and I even have sponsors today, and I'm like, wow, this is like an adult's game, So yeah, I don't take anything for granted, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Oh, and the last thing I'd say is that my son that I started talking about at the beginning, when the war started, a week after the war started, we decided that we're going to send him back to his dad to Australia because it wasn't very safe here and schools were closing down. And I didn't want him to be at home like during COVID. He plays tennis and is a very active boy, and I didn't want him to rot at home like happened in COVID. So we sent him to Australia, and after a month, him and his dad got back to me and they're like, I want to stay in Australia. I don't want to come back. And I'm like, okay, he's got an Australian citizenship. There's nothing, I mean, I've done the same when I was 20. So I know what he feels, and I know how crazy Israel is. And I gave him that choice. And so when that happened, I had to kind of embrace the change. Of course, I was devastated. I was crying and I broke
course.
down completely. But instead of fighting with him or with his dad, I decided to pack up and come to Melbourne and meet them and speak to them and see his new home and his new school and everything, and just do this transition together with him. And so I did. So I stayed a few weeks in Melbourne, and then I went to Thailand for a month in order to cry and break down properly and integrate them into my life. And then I could come back home.
You're such a good mom. You're so sweet.
Yeah, it's the right thing for him. It's good for him.
Of course.
And I also I'm not a fan of the army, so I don't really want him to go to the army. So if he leaves when he's young, that's easier. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Wow.
Think of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry for this long introduction, but
no, not at all. It's so good to get to know you more, and thank you for sharing all of that. I think like there's a lot of things that obviously came up through your story that I'd love to ask you about. And I feel like one of the main ones is, I think a lot of people are in fear of when scenarios like the pandemic occur or other instances like maybe definitely with what's going on in Israel. How have you been able to find the courage to speak up? Because I feel like a lot of people maybe want to speak up, but just are scared, are in fear of the potential outcomes. I mean, we see it. It feels like almost on a day-to-day basis. Claire and I were just chatting earlier about how Julian Assange finally today was released. Celebration time, right?
Yay. Yeah.
But some people are like, I like to see that from the outside, but I don't want to live through it. And how do you navigate that?
Right. So I think people need to remember, I mean, it's very easy to fall into fear, right? And you'll take one scenario, and obviously it's not a pleasant scenario if you've mentioned Julian Assange, and you'll forget about the details and you'll focus only on the experience of fear. But really, what Julian did is so courageous. This is like 10,000 kilometers away from what I've done. And he has taken a huge risk. And I think that when most people are looking at speaking out, they don't necessarily are going to be taking the same mega risk that Julian was taking, or even I am taking. They're simply going to be talking to their neighbors or friends or family and tell them what they think, or even write a post on Facebook. Most people don't go to the extent of opening up a Facebook or a Twitter account and working on it for years, or opening a blog and writing their opinion. Most people are sitting on the fence and they're communicating like normally with people. And so you have to remember that there's a scale and there's a spectrum that you're in. And if you chose, like me, to become a journalist and really speak out, then you're on the extreme side of the spectrum. But if you're just like a normal person, then just speak out in your close surrounding and be courageous enough to that's not a big risk to take. That's what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? So we're so like addicted to that fear that we're constantly thinking, oh, here's a reason to be afraid. What is there to be afraid about if you're going to just voice your opinion and talk about what you think and try to encourage a healthy debate, which I understand that today this has become controversial to just debate about stuff. And it's probably just better to quote what the news anchor was saying, right? Because then you're safe. But seriously, people have to remember what normal life is, even if society today dictates completely abnormal behaviors to us. It is completely normal to have a discussion and to debate and to raise ideas and questions and not attack each other straight away, but just be open to listening. So what is there to be afraid about? You know what I mean? Unless you really put yourself in a dangerous situation. So that's the first thing. And secondly, where do you get the courage? Well, the fear of speaking out is really the fear of what people are going to say about you, right? Because unless you live in a country like Israel or even worse, like Afghanistan or Iran or whatever, or so many examples where you speak out against the establishment and you can be in jail. I mean, in Israel, again, there's a spectrum, and it depends where you are on the spectrum. But follow the Human Rights Foundation to see how freedom of speech is being suppressed in many, many countries around the world. But unless you live in places like that, then you really don't have a reason to stop yourself from speaking out. You really need to not let that human right that you have be violated and abolished. And the only way it will not be violated is by you exercising it and standing on your right to do it. And you don't need to ask anyone or get permission, just like with Bitcoin. You just do it because it's your right. And if we're so afraid of what people are going to say about us, then that is an invitation to look at, why do I care so much about what people say about me? What kind of spot does that trigger for me? What did people say about me when I was, a kid, and someone said something or laughed at me or mocked me, or everyone were like pointing at me doing something silly. And since that day, I decided that I'm going to be careful, and I'm going to be really, really judging my words carefully. And why? And is it again now? And did I adopt that as a habit? Because all I care about is looking good to people. And so I did, and I am still confronting that little demon, for a very profound period of time. When I decided to really go out there and speak out, it went hand in hand, I think, with my spiritual awakening, because to some extent, it was not even a choice. I had to. I mean, like, once I started waking up to things that are happening around me, seeing what they are for what they are, I had to speak out. It wasn't even a choice. And then I knew that it would have prices, but I had to. And then October 7th is the same. I'm seeing what's happening. I'm sitting here in my home. My son's tennis tournament got canceled because of the missiles that woke us up at 6 a.m. And we're sitting here in the living room, and I'm watching my Twitter, and I'm seeing poor people from Israel tweeting in Hebrew, "Come help us," and people on Facebook writing posts. We're in the shelter and we're hearing the gunshots outside. Please help us. SOS kind of messages. And I'm sitting there in the living room with my son. I'm like, where the fuck are they? Why are they not going to help them? And I felt so frustrated and so upset. I knew people were dying. I knew something really bad is happening. And I'm like, that couldn't be. There are layers of defense around this area. There are electronic fence, there are drones, there are troops, there's a police, there's the army. Where is everything that I know that is supposed to be working? So I was so upset. I couldn't hold myself from speaking out. So I sat down with my microphone and I recorded a video, and I told about my experience in the army and how that couldn't be. And what I think that is happening, that Israel is just allowing this to happen because they need a justification to go into Gaza and start a war. Yeah. And I said it, and I had to say it. Mm-hmm. Was I not afraid of what people will say? Yeah, maybe in the back of my head, but it was stronger than me. You know what I mean? And so I think sometimes we have to just practice. And by the way, I did get a lot of heat and hate for what I did, for speaking out, mostly from Israelis or Jewish people around the world that could not bear the fact that I would point a finger at the government or the state of Israel and say that it's allowing a horrible massacre like that to have happened to its people, like it's killing its own people. But for me, it was crystal clear. I saw them doing it during COVID. Now they're doing it again. So my message was, you're forsaken. You're on your own. Take care of yourself. Protect yourself. There's no one coming to save you. Literally, no one's coming to save you. Wake the fuck up, So I think I am already quite experienced in putting that fear aside of what people will say about me or do to me when I feel that rage in my stomach and have to speak out because I know that it's not right. So to how much are we going to let fear manage us versus doing the right thing and pointing at atrocities that are happening.
Absolutely. And I think it's also strange because it's like misappropriated fear, because it's not like there isn't something else on the other side of it. By like everyone staying quiet and just allowing things to go on and what have you, the other side of that is actually really scary and what we should be really afraid of. Not just, whereas we're more scared of, especially in the West, we're very scared of the shame. Like that's like our biggest fear is like, again, like you said, what people will think. Whereas it's like, well, no, actually, it's more scary what the world looks like when all of those human rights have been taken away from you and we're fully controlled and all of that kind of stuff. Like that's really justifiable fear. Whereas it's like, who cares what people think of you? Yeah, I think it's interesting. And I think one of the things as well that to touch on what you were talking about as well, in terms of, you said, oh, I'm not a qualified journalist, but I think you have a qualification that most journalists don't have anymore. And I think also it does come from fear, but that's actually journalistic integrity. And, you know, some of them work for big corporations that are owned by bigger corporations and things like that. And so, again, they have that fear of, well, I'm going to be fired, or the end result, you know, look what happened with Julian Assange, right?
Exactly.
It'll be interesting to hear from him actually whether he regrets whether he, you know, has regrets. Like he's just been through an awful decade-long ordeal, but I'm pretty sure that he's going to come out and say that was like part of my journey, and I still wouldn't take back what I said or what we released. You know, he may not
I'm
say
sure
that.
he wouldn't.
Yeah, I
I'm
don't
sure he wouldn't take back what he did. No, I'm
know.
sure.
And so I think, you know, there's something that's really missing in our media, which we've been taught to rely on as a source of truth. And that's why it's so amazing that we have like independent journalists like yourself who are coming forward, who are just like, look, I'm just going to say what I see. I'm not bought and paid for by anyone, and take it or leave it, basically. Because I think that's what it is at the end of the day. It's like, take it or leave it. And for those people that sometimes, you know, are at home within their own communities. And it's not even like about speaking out, but it's more like sitting at a dinner table and everybody's having this conversation and you're sitting there going, I don't agree with anything that they say, in your heart. But you're like, I'm just going to keep quiet. Like I personally have never really had the ability to do that for my sins. But you know, that's just like my nature anyway. But I also think that there is a spiritual element about it. And I love that you brought in your spiritual awakening, because I do wonder, I feel like every time we compromise ourselves in that way, we do something out of fear. We don't say something out of fear. We do something that we know isn't really right, but it's like, oh, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. I may get in trouble for this, even though we know that it's not right. I do feel like that's like a soul connection happens. Like you become disconnected from who you really are. And I've always wondered that, is there a point that you can be so disconnected from the center of who you are that really you're kind of like just this avatar wandering around, this meat suit that's like kind of soulless? And I don't know, when I look around, there's like evidence of that. What do you feel about that kind of thing from a spiritual perspective? You know, speaking
Definitely.
of,
No, I agree with you 100%. I can just testify on myself. Before that journey started, I'm looking back at myself with a lot of love, and right, I'm very grateful for myself bringing myself to here, to where I am. But I was so disconnected from my emotions and from my true calling and from a deeper understanding of the world, that I could very naturally get carried away to take part in things that today I would never, right? Like you were mentioning, for example, being sponsored by like different entities that you then have to report to, right? I would never look at or search who they are, what they do, what kind of culture do they have. just a little bit because I cared about women's rights at the time. So I wouldn't go in that direction, right? But I would not broaden my horizons and bring that integrity to everything I did. And it's not because I was a bad person. It's because I was really disconnected from myself and what I cared about, what I really care about in life. Um, and so I think we are walking around very disconnected from ourselves, and in a big way, thanks or due to the massive acceleration of technology that came into our life, and the fact that we're watching most of what's happening around the world through screens and not really have the firsthand experience or in general experiences, like physical experiences with things that are happening. And so when we are, imagine that most of the information or the sensory information that you are receiving is being received through a proxy, through a screen, through a third party. It's not a direct experience that you have. And so everything is mitigated in some way. And it doesn't matter whether it's brought to you in the most raw form or it's being also, edited and digested for you. Even if it's very raw, you're still consuming it through a proxy, which then gives you the false, I think, illusion that you are in a way distant from it, right? You're seeing it, you're experiencing it, you're understanding it maybe, but you're not there. And because it's far away from you, you have the luxury of criticizing it or laughing about it or pretending that you understand it or know something about it, but you haven't really experienced it. It has good sides and bad sides, but regardless of how we judge it, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, it is through a proxy. It is through another medium. And that medium is creating a real distance between us, like an emotional distance and a true, like a distance in the real sense of the word. You're not really connected to what's happening there because there is a third party entity that is mitigating something for you. And I think a very good example of or a proof point for that in the world today is how kids or adolescents are not really able to create social connections really well. Especially I see my son, is I'm not just talking about him specifically, but his age group. It's very hard for them to start dating, for example. When we were young and we didn't have, those things with us all the time, we relied on physical connection and seeing people with our eyes and touching them and smelling them and hearing them and understanding them. And there was this physical chemistry that we could feel and energies that we could feel, especially when we're younger and the hormones are going crazy, And now imagine that a big chunk of their communication, I don't know to say the ratio. I don't know. I probably wouldn't exaggerate if I say more than 50% of their communication with their peers is through fucking Instagram or TikTok or whatever. And then they become really desensitized in a way. They are not really good at looking someone in the eye and feeling the energy between them and then judging whether it's a good or a bad signal. Should I go for that person or not? Should I say something? How should I approach them? They're lacking social skills. And I think it's a lot to do with the technology and the fact that we are being mitigated for the information that exists in the world. So yeah, I think there's a level of disconnect that is created due to technology. And I don't want people to think that I think that technology is just bad. No, it's got good and bad. You just have to be aware and know how to use it and when to use it and when not to use it, and have your wisdom and your boundaries and your like just balance everything to the right balance. That's the word I was looking for.
It's like, I won't say it's neutral because there are like darker sides of it and there are also really positive sides to it, but it is one of those things where it's like, it's how you interact with it. And I mean, I think that with everything, to be honest, like whether
Exactly.
whether it's, whatever. I think that it's just like, it's about us developing our own boundaries of how we interact with things. But that's so interesting. I'd never even really thought of it like that in terms of like teenagers. And I think there's also that element that like, everything is being watched, like everything is caught on camera, everything is, all of those embarrassing moments, all those clumsy moments when you're like early teens and things like that, that's almost all now documented. And so there's this other like kind of form of self-editing, because you're like, oh, I'm being watched. So it's very hard to like dial into that, like, who am I, that, what do I really want, putting your own needs first, and doing that. It's hard to do when you feel like you're being judged and watched constantly. So yeah.
And it's also being abused by some sick people out there, right? Especially when they love abusing kids for it, because kids can do really stupid things online today if they're not being watched, right? And or educated by their parents, and people will abuse it. And this is like a real call for parents to be on that point, because your kids may be doing stuff that is not good for them or you, if some sickos, decide to take advantage of it. It's happening. And we need to be aware of the dangers. But at the same time, if it wasn't for that, the three of us wouldn't be able to sit here and have this conversation, right? So it's really the good with the bad, and the fact that the tool in the wrong hands is being abused.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah, definitely.
Let's get into the positive use of technology, and let's chat about your journey in Bitcoin. How did you
Right.
yourself in Bitcoin circles?
Right. So the way it happened is during COVID. I think it was about 2 years ago. That's it. I had known that the same way the state had allowed itself to invade my bodily autonomy and human rights, the next thing they'll probably do is invade my freedom to transact and my financial freedom and my economics, because that was just like making sense. And I saw that they're starting to talk about CBDCs. And so I put one and one together and I said, okay, I have to start understanding money better. So I kind of asked for help from people who may have known. Like I had an employee in my team that had Bitcoin. So I asked him questions about it, but he couldn't explain really well. And so I didn't have much time to go and study, but I knew that I have to start. And then coincidentally or not, this guy who was following me on Twitter, he's Israeli and he's the head of the Israel Bitcoin community. And he saw everything I was doing during COVID, and he was aligned with everything I was doing, even though he wasn't vocal about it. He still appreciated what I was doing. And he literally came over to my office and said, okay, you sit down now. You're red pilled completely. Now we need to orange pill you. You're ready. You're right. Let's do it. And I'm like, yay, I was looking for someone to teach me. And he helped me do my first transaction. And he taught me the basics, and then he gave me the book, The Bitcoin Standard, which was amazing. And then I started learning more and more about money, because, in order to understand Bitcoin, you have to learn about money. And so I went into the fiat rabbit hole to understand how money is being created and how the fiat system is designed, and how this is really, I think, the fabric of the matrix. And it was a revelation for me, because it's like all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place into that fabric. Like I could see how all the other vectors that the state and the global organizations are trying to manipulate us are really aligned with the underlying fabric, which is called money. That's like the best tool for them to exercise all of the energy, sucking of energy that they're doing to us through inflation and taxation. And so once I understood how money works, I was then, okay, Bitcoin. And when I went to the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I was so happy for the first time in a long time, Not that I wasn't happy
Aw.
before. I mean, I did see the good in people. And I mean, my spiritual awakening really helped me to see the good in life as well. The fact that I did ayahuasca in Mexico during that time. And, and the ayahuasca showed me that there are really good things in life and I shouldn't be despaired. And so I did see good things. But then when Bitcoin came, it was like, okay, thank God. Now there is a real visible for me, a visible path out of this matrix. Not
Yes.
just spiritually, but physically. Like in this world, we can
Mhm.
actually live, even if, it's not in our lifetime that everything is that we're on the Bitcoin standard. Still, I have the vision. Now I can see how it can be. And now what I want to do is to be part of building that new reality for my son, at least.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I was super excited. It was like a breath of fresh air to discover Bitcoin.
Right.
And since then, I'm like learning all the time. And I have the privilege of sitting with like the smartest people, the best people. Like this community, the Bitcoin community is unfucking believable.
Yes.
Such nice people.
Yes.
And
So great.
smart.
Some of
They
these.
gotta be smart. They can't be stupid, right?
No, but also
I-
it's like a lost art of like, very philosophical. Like this is like I'm Sagittarius. This is speaking my language, like I love the kind of like philosophical things. And, again, when I first got into Bitcoin, it was like I never thought that Bitcoin would bring me into these questions about myself, my own values, and
Yes.
all of these philosophical kind of elements. So it's wild. And I'm so grateful for some of these Bitcoiners for like bringing this out in people as well. So it's really cool.
At one point into my journey, I was so excited by what I'm discovering that I still am. I am convinced that Bitcoin is some kind of outwardly invention and godly manifestation and spiritual experience. It's way more than just a technology because it really does change it flips the paradigm on its head, and it changes a very, very long timeline of history that we have been experiencing as humans on this planet for tens, hundreds of thousands of years of oppression, of enslavement. And I think that it's a tool. If it succeeds, then it's a tool that can really change the way people experience life.
Yeah.
So I am quite certain that Bitcoin has a very unique role in the shift of human consciousness and in the ascension of human consciousness. I'm quite clear about that. And I'm not saying that much because most people will think I'm crazy or just wouldn't understand what I mean.
You're on
but
the right podcast.
I know with you guys, I can say it.
We
You're in the right place.
called the Bitcoin Zodiac. When I tell people that, they're just like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's not as weird as it sounds, but yeah.
It's just outwardly, and probably an alien gave it to us, but
But whatever.
I time traveler.
But here's the digital wallet and how you can buy a coffee with it. Don't worry. So what, an alien gave you technology to buy coffee with? I don't get it. I don't mind what they think, right? But again, and that, yeah, I mean, it's so smart. It's amazing.
Beyond.
It's way beyond because it just changes. It changes the rules of the game.
Yes.
The fact that it cannot be just created because someone said so and someone decided and someone needs to gain more power is just like phenomenal. Okay, great. There's the laws of math, there's the laws of physics, there's the laws of time. And and that's funny, again, that also connects to the spiritual sense of it. You know how when we talk about the physical experience that we're going through in life on the third dimension, we always talk about time and space and the laws of physics and the fact that we're bound to those that low dimension that low dimension game that we're playing. But then when we ascend, when we go to the fifth dimension, then we experience time in a different way. Sometimes we don't experience time at all, and time is thwarted, and we get those jumps and those synchronicities, and we feel that the universe is a lot more quantum than linear. And the same with space. Sometimes we will have like visions that we're not where we are, and things will change, and everything is different in the fifth dimension versus the third dimension. And oftentimes I think spiritual people tend to think that the fifth dimension is the epitome, it's the holy grail, like this is where we need to go, like the fifth, the sixth, and over. We need to aspire to get to the higher dimensions, because that's where that's the best, right? We judge it in terms of good and bad. But when you look at Bitcoin and you say, okay, but we've been put here on this earth in a third dimension. Even if Earth is now shifting into a higher dimension, we're still in the third dimension for a while now. And most people will still be there until they die, and they won't even experience the jump between the two dimensions. They just be on the third one. And so if life is really in the third dimension, the physical life for most people, then, and Bitcoin is created in the third dimension, harnessing rules of time and space, right? And physics, then that's another very good reason for you to look at life in the third dimension and say, this is great. It's not just all bad in the third dimension, like looking at it in the lens of a spiritual person, right? That just wants to go to the higher dimensions and escape there. No. There's some awesome stuff in life bound into the rules of time and space and physics, the way it is in the third dimension. And there's some fucking unreal creations and inventions that can come out of that dimension. Let's appreciate it. Let's embrace it. Let's enjoy it, And sure, it will help us then live life probably in a better way and ascend to higher dimensions as well. But let's not forget where this invention came from and what kind of rules it is harnessing in order to succeed. And let's have some respect towards that,
Definitely.
I hope I managed to explain what I...
Totally. I think as well, it's like
very well.
It's the first time I'm saying it, because I think about it often, but yeah.
No, I think I actually think that to truly understand Bitcoin, you need to have some understanding of like this metaphysical, like it is a metaphysical entity, to be honest, it's not tangible. And but a friend of mine posted something, I think her name is Sarah Al-Madani, and she was asked a question, what is luxury? And she said, 5D consciousness, 3D experience. And I was like, yeah, babe, that's it. Like,
love it.
Exactly.
Exactly. So where I think like secularism demands you to like deny your divinity, whereas like modern spirituality is like trying to transcend your humanity. And it's like, no, that's not really where it's at. It's like both, we need both. And I think that's really what Jesus was saying when he said, like, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, because he really was like 100% divine, 100% human. And like, that's also what we are, and it's like, I truly believe that if I was not meant to be here, I wouldn't have a physical body. I wouldn't be here, so it's like, we've got things to do, things to experience. And I think denying that is as sad as denying our divinity as well, so I think there's got to be a balance of both. And I think to
100%. And that's why I think that's why I called my podcast You're the Voice, because we each have to find our voice and make sure that we live that voice, because otherwise we just live on automatic pilot our whole life. And we want to, we want to be in this school of life, the school of experiences, of completing lessons and moving on to the next ones and the next ones and the next one. and we can only do that if we're connected to ourselves and embody into who we are and what our mission is and why we're here on this earth. So if we're not, we're just going to be a battery in the matrix with no purpose and very, very boring life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like Bitcoin really brings such a key role to all of this and to us transcending and to all of the collective humanity actually starting to understand that we can live in between the 5D and the 3D and experience both. And I really love the saying that gold is physical, fiat is political, and Bitcoin is metaphysical. And that's just how I see, all of us continuing to, like, the money comes first and then humans kind of like catch up. And so for us to be able to catch up to that. And you said earlier that, you said if Bitcoin succeeds.
Yeah, you were
If
referring
Bitcoin
before, Claire was referring before to my interview with Jeff Booth, and I learned this from him. I asked him, why do you
Right.
always say if Bitcoin is centralized and secure, is it not? And he said, well, I say it mostly because people have to remember that it's their responsibility to make sure that it is decentralized and secure. If we are not taking the initiative to become nodes on the network, then it will not be decentralized anymore. And if we don't take the initiative to operate, to validate the transactions, right? To look at the blockchain, to understand how it works, then it's not secure. And so it's kind of like a reminder for us that we're in the source of that, because it is a decentralized community. It's a decentralized technology, and it means that it relies on each and every one of us. So I say if because of that, just as a reminder. I am totally believing that this is it, like that there's no going back. I don't think that Bitcoin's going to fail. Obviously, theoretically, there's like a slight 0 point something percent that it may not, if all people that hold it, millions and millions of people that hold it today, all decide that it's crap and they throw it away. Sure, then it's gone. But that's the power of the collective. Like the people that hold Bitcoin today are understanding it and are not everyone, obviously, but some people hold it without understanding it. But most people that hold it, they get it and they understand their role in the network, and they would not, if they would not give it up or return it to the market, then Bitcoin cannot fail. So I have full confidence that this is not only succeeding, but this is dictating the way we live our lives, and that it's happening very, very soon. Actually, it's happening already now. I think we're very, very lucky to be in that time of changing. We're in a transition period. We're in a changeover period where we're changing from the old world to the new world, also in the financial system. And so the new rules of the game in the new world are very different from the old world. And that transition period is painful. And I think we're watching it now, and it's actually going to get a lot uglier. But as I said in my presentation in Prague last week when I was there, we're walking in two different paths in parallel. We have the dark path. It's the fiat path, which is inevitably going to be the CBDC path. And we have the orange path, which is allowing you to create more sovereignty and responsibility and freedom. And you can't be just on one of them unless really you're, I don't know, a mega millionaire and you move to El Salvador and you're living on a Bitcoin standard. But otherwise,
That's what
probably... Yeah,
that's like say that.
That's my dream, right? But if you're not one of those people, the very few, then you're probably walking in both paths in parallel for a while now. And we have to know how to navigate between those two paths. But we have the opportunity to do it. Whereas if Bitcoin didn't exist, you'd have to just go the dark fiat CBDC path. You had no choice. You may have, I don't know, tried to transition into gold or whatever, but history shows that that is not safe either. I do have gold. I love gold, but it's not the solution. And Bitcoin really changes the picture completely, because it is. I did not find until today a reason why it cannot be the new way of living life, the solution for the matrix. So yeah, I'm totally bullish and
Yeah,
so are we. So are we. And I love that you said like the importance of actually understanding Bitcoin and understanding that we are the network. Like it's up to us that whether Bitcoin works or not. As it actually says in the Bitcoin white paper, that's why Satoshi Nakamoto created that incentive. The incentive for us to participate in it, to be rewarded by it. And it's us that makes it stronger, a stronger network, a more secure network. So actually, for anybody that's listening that hasn't read the Bitcoin white paper yet, please, it's like 9 pages long, 12 sections. Go read it.
Yeah. And my next goal is to operate my own node. So I've read about it already. Now I just need to buy the little computer and start running my node. And I think, and it's relatively fast that I'm getting there. I think most people could be years and years on Bitcoin and not even think to have their own node. But I think it's really important to take part, like a more active part in running the network and validating it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the conversations that you're having as well, that like, you're having with all of these different Bitcoiners, I think that's also really playing a part, because I think that narrative really play a role in in our understanding of things. And you said the Bitcoin standard, that was a big aha moment for me as well. I'd heard about Bitcoin before, but it wasn't really explained. I didn't have the context of like mining money on the internet. Like, what the hell is that, but then when I read the Bitcoin standard, I was like, oh, there's way more to this, so I mean, Sefer Dinamos is definitely going straight to heaven for that book. It's orange pilled with so many people, at least Bitcoin heaven, and it sort of, without that, I didn't have the context of understanding. So I think like even the conversations that you're having, the conversations that we're having, hopefully as well, is really sort of like other people can kind of see that narrative being played out. And one of the things that I listened to a Jeff Booth interview, maybe I guess it was a year ago, 6 months ago, something. And it was Bitcoin and the Nature of Reality. I think it was with Knut, and who wrote Everything divided by 21 million. And Jeff Booth was talking again about if it stays decentralized and secure. And he's like, there's really, like, there is that caveat, but I've investigated, there's really no way that it can't remain, decentralized, because they can't find us all. Like there's not like it.
That's right.
And
there's redundancy. It's just like that they can't turn off the internet. They can't turn off Bitcoin.
Yeah.
That's the nature of decentralized systems.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. People don't get that.
Oh, absolutely. People do not get this at all. They're like, yeah, but governments will ban it. It's like, okay, but Bitcoin doesn't care what your government thinks.
And then it's crazy. Look at China. They banned mining and people still use it, hold it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. They'll try whatever they can. They'll regulate it to death. And they'll ban this, they'll ban that. But in the end of the day, as I said to Sailor in our latest interview, I said to him, I feel that this is a mycelium. This is like so much stronger than anything else. It's the underlying network between all of us, and we help each other just by being connected through that decentralized network. And he said, you call it the virtuous network. And that's how I called the episode with him, the virtuous network. But it's like a mycelium. And yes, the conversations I'm having with these people are so, so important. And obviously I'm not the only one. There are so many podcasts and Bitcoin podcasts that are doing amazing work that I watch regularly.
Yeah.
But when I first of all, I'm a woman and not many women do that. So I think more women are connected to
It's
me, which is great. I have about a 50-50 audience, I think, of men and women. And that's very important because women have to learn about money. And secondly, it's important because that's our way of educating, right? You guys doing what you're doing, it's amazing. You manage to tap into a community of people and take them through a journey with a very soft way of teaching them. This is not a hard sell. This is not a push down your throat kind of approach. This is like, we're having a conversation. We're talking about it, and we're learning new concepts and ideas and asking questions and receiving answers. And like podcasting, thank God for that. Where would we be without it, right? So I think it's so important to do that and to have those kind of conversations and capture them and share them. And the other thing I do, which I think people, probably Bitcoiners, need to do more, is to do like little talks where they are, physical meetups. And so I do some lectures from time to time in Israel and in other places in the world that I go to. And I teach people about money and CBDC and then gold and Bitcoin. And by the end of the evening, they would probably go either to buy Bitcoin or gold if they're too afraid, at least something. And I also have the Sefer Dinamos books translated to Hebrew. And I sell it out to people if they want that, because it's another tool. So yeah, I think we have a role to play in passing this knowledge forward and educating the market. Not just because, and that's why it makes me always laugh when people say to me, this is a pyramid scheme, this is a Ponzi scheme. This is
What do you think?
Someone told me that the conferences I go to are like a pyramid, and I'm like, you fucking idiots. You don't get anything. In a pyramid, you're supposed to like benefit from the person that you bring into the network. So financially, I don't benefit, except for, when you're a Bitcoiner, obviously you make me stronger because the whole network is growing. But I don't get any incentive, like a direct financial incentive out of bringing you in, except for I'm helping you to find a new tool to redeem your sovereignty and your freedom. If you want that, take it and make your life better. If you don't. But calling it a pyramid scheme is the funniest thing in the world.
Yeah, especially as fiat currency is like the biggest Ponzi scheme.
The ultimate.
Yeah. So I think it's amazing. It's also, to me, it feels like holding Bitcoin is a bit of like a quiet revolution as well. Like for me, there's things that I will definitely speak out on, and I probably more have to have wisdom on the other side and know when to tone that down a bit, is more my personality. But there is this silent revolution that it just starts with no, and whether it's to do with COVID, no, I'm not going to take everything, every little Fauci ouchie that comes down the pike. No, I'm not going to eat your shitty food. No, I'm not going to spend my days hypnotized by TikTok. No, I'm not going to take every psychiatric drug available. And no, I'm not going to sell my Bitcoin. So it's like really just a very personal no, I think is sort of how we stand up against these things. And people that do that, then the people in power are very few compared to the many. And that's one of the things I really love about your podcast, is that it really tunes into the, like, you know what, you may be only one person, but your voice matters, and what you do matters, and what you say no to matters. And I love that message that you bring. Is there anything?
And I love what you guys are doing with your podcast. I've been listening to a few episodes. I love it. And I also wanted to ask you from an astrological perspective where we're heading. I know you always give these analysis and I love them.
Well, I think the future
I didn't even
looks
tell
bright.
you my star sign. Not that I know what it means, but you guys always talk about it. So
I was going to ask you.
What is?
I was going to ask you, What do you know what your main sign, like, so your sun sign, your moon, your rising?
Someone did a map for me, but
Oh,
I think I'm an Aquarius in the not my my star sign is Aquarius. My sign is Pisces. So I
Right.
was born in March, 7th of March. But I think it's in Aquarius, if I'm not mistaken.
your rising sign,
Yeah, my
your
rising
ascendant.
sign.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well,
That
that's
makes
beautiful because
a lot of
it's
sense.
it's very aligned. We're currently in the Aquarian age, and Aquarius is all about revolutions, about transformations, about technology. That one's really big. And so we're actually from 2012, we only just shifted into the Aquarian age, and we have that now for the next 2,150 years. So we're at the very start of the age of technology, revolution, bringing things to the new and transforming. So the future definitely looks bright for things such as Bitcoin, things such as technology, artificial intelligence. And yeah, I think in the coming year for the astral with the astrology, it looks like we're gonna have massive inflation come through, like we haven't seen anything yet. It's
That
when
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
yeah, we have the planet Neptune when it moves into the sign of Aries. Historically, it's shown to be a massive inflation period. So we'll have a melt up in assets, which is great for people that are, you know, right now starting to really look at where are their finances and starting to shift into assets. No financial advice, people, but you know, that's what the astrology says.
And then
Yep.
further out as well, I'm sure that you're sort of familiar with the like phrase, the Great Reset and things like that. And so like astrologically, there is like a lot of, you know, with Pluto and Aquarius, this is very much like a revolutionary kind of
Mhm.
vibe to it. And so again, very interesting for something like Bitcoin. But also just for people to be prepared, we're coming towards the end of the 18.6 year cycle, the point of the 18.6 year cycle in around 2025, 26, where we could
Yeah.
see, we expect to see like a massive kind of like market drop that will make 2008 look kind of like comfy. And then that will be a 4 year period bringing us into 2030. So I expect there to be a kind of like from a personal level, not necessarily looking at the astrology, I expect there to be a sort of a much more of a separation of those two paths that you're talking
Yeah.
about as well. Uh,
Yes.
so yeah, the
Very
energies
much.
are really aligning to that. Not that it's like pretty and beautiful all the time and Bitcoin up only,
Mm.
but it is definitely like aligning to those kind of like, especially the revolutionary kind of qualities to Bitcoin as well. There's definitely that, and the innovation and the revamping of the system and, you know, all of that. And we kind of see like our episodes that one day we're going to look back in 10 years and it's like tracking the evolution of Bitcoin through these like moon cycles. So I don't
I
know,
love it.
fun to do that. So yeah, yeah. It's amazing. So before we finish, is there
Mhm.
anything else that you really want to communicate that you haven't
Yeah.
already?
Well, maybe just that, tuning into what you said about having a really dark or hard time ahead of us for the next few years. Economically, I think we're starting to see that around the world in a lot of countries. And because of that, people are starting to wake up. And so I think that it's an opportunity for people to start learning about how to protect their wealth. This is the reason why I came into Bitcoin. I was like, I have to hedge what I've got. I've got to protect it. So I came for that and I stayed for the freedom that it allows me to have. And I think that that's the most valuable thing I've ever done in my life. So I really encourage people to do that. And in my journalistic work, I follow closely on the developments of CBDC projects around the world. And I cover that on my blog, on my Twitter, and that's what I talk about in the Bitcoin conferences as well, because you'd be surprised. A lot of Bitcoiners, they don't really understand or know like the extent in which the fiat system is evolving, and the digital age that is coming. Like we're talking about technology, how they're evolving their dark ways and giving it another, it's like shape shifting into a new form. And so that those lectures or those articles that I write are really eye-opening to just understand how the system we still live in, unfortunately, like not all of us can live in a Bitcoin standard yet, how they play out in the world and what we can do to kind of stay away from them or try to develop some sovereignty alongside that dark path that is unfolding, and I don't think that there's anything we can do to stop it. I think we can just learn about it and be more wise about our steps and our decisions. As you said, like look at assets and look at Bitcoin and look at what we can do to protect what we've got. That's the opportunity. So I think like that's why I am talking about this topic so much about CBDC, because I really think that if people understand what's coming, they can be better prepared for the next shit show, which is inevitably coming.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so powerful.
Absolutely.
And we'll where can people find you? We'll put it in the comments below,
Yeah.
but where can people continue to follow you and read your blog and of course your podcast?
Yeah, so the best place, like the place where I chit chat the most is on Twitter, and I'm on Nostr. If you're a Bitcoiner and you're not yet on Nostr, then you should be, because if we have Bitcoin for freedom of transaction, we have Nostr for freedom of everything else. And
Yes.
so open a Nostr account. I'm there. I'm on Telegram. I have channels in English and in Hebrew, and where I bring different news from Israel and around the world, and a lot of Bitcoin. And some of my followers are upset with that, but I don't give a fuck. And you can read my blog on Substack. um, yeah, my podcast is called You're the Voice, and we'll put a link to it. You can find it on YouTube, Spotify, and also on Fountain, which is a Bitcoin app. It's built on top of Nostr. And I'm sure Bitcoiners didn't know that because it's relatively new. But as you're listening to podcasts, you guys have your podcast there? You should.
Someone
Fountain.
reached
You
out.
have to have it on Fountain, because once you have a podcast there, people that listen to podcasts can earn sats as they listen. So
Oh,
they're
that's
being
awesome.
incentivized to listen. And you can also
Yeah.
promote your podcast on Fountain. And yeah, and you can get zaps and boosts as people are listening to you. So I'm on Fountain
Amazing.
as well. Yeah.
Gotta do it.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And I think, Claire, did you not have a question about the title of her
Yeah,
podcast?
I mean, I knew that there had to be some Australian connection because I was like, is John Farnham upset about
I love that song so much.
Yes.
It's my anthem. Whenever I want to get some motivational boost, I put it like full on in the house, and I just love it. It's such a great song, and it's so fitting to every time. It's
Yeah,
fitting for now. It was great for them back then. It
totally.
fits for so many reasons because it talks about, the oppression and just making yourself heard when you think you mean nothing, and you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. And
It's a great song.
that's
Yeah.
a great
I'm
song.
gonna put it
Maybe
after we finish.
yeah, maybe only Australians will get that reference. But I said to Corinne, I'm like, she has to have some tie to Australia. Like her podcast is called You're the Voice.
I've got an Australian citizenship. I
Yeah,
can go and come and go whenever I want.
Aussie and
And yeah, I love Australia. I was really sad to see what happened to Australia in the last few years and what is still continuing to happen now.
yeah.
Um, I do
With the
think that it
approval
takes,
of the digital identity, Bill?
Exactly. It takes a big role in experimenting something on the Australian people. And it's really, really sad. I interviewed when I was in Australia in December, January, I went to Brisbane to interview Senator Malcolm Roberts. And he was so great. We had a 2-hour conversation. It's on my podcast. It became completely viral all around the world because he gave so many truth bombs in this episode. And he's such a courageous guy to speak out like that against politicians, against the government, against the global powers. Really, really great guy. And it doesn't matter whether you're subscribing to his party or not. Just the fact that he's standing up and saying what he's saying is very, very brave. And that's why I love interviewing those kind of politicians from time to time. You find them, the ones that are left of center and they're not really like, they're politicians, but they have a lot of criticism on politicians. And you can find them. The ones that came to really serve the public, that did not forget that their role is to be public servants, right? Absolutely. He says it in the episode. So yeah,
I think that's also,
I love Australia.
I think that's an important thing to say as well, though, is that like you don't have to agree with everything that someone says, but you can respect the fact that they're speaking their truth. And I think it's like, it's okay to not agree with people. Like I can still love someone that I don't hold the same views as, And I think that's like a really important message for these times as well. So yeah.
It's an important skill to develop because we become so emotionally charged that we don't want to have anything to do with a person that we don't like, but maybe one of the messages that they've got is a really good message that we should amplify out there. So yeah, it teaches us, I think, a bit more humbleness and to disconnect from our immediate emotional reaction, and bring out truth, even if it's not easy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I could talk to you for another 3 hours, but
maybe we should do it again sometime.
You're welcome back anytime.
We'd love to have you back.
And
thank
you so much for joining us, and keep speaking your truth and putting out these amazing messages, and we'll speak soon. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so I loved spending time with you. Thanks.
Likewise. Peace, love, and Bitcoin.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bitcoin Zodiac Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussions about the evolution of Bitcoin viewed through the lens of financial astrology. This podcast does not offer financial advice, so please make sure you do your own research. And stay tuned for our next episode, where we will continue to dive deeper and build off these perception-expanding topics. Remember, whatever your beliefs may be, we all have something to learn from each other. So stay curious, stay open-minded, and keep exploring the world of Bitcoin and astrology. As always, may the stars align in your favor and your crypto investments prosper. Until next time, peace, love, and Bitcoin.